As countries around the world are trying to pull their economies out of the coronavirus crisis, the EU is launching a week of climate action. Leaders are hoping to use the reboot as an opportunity to rethink our relationship with nature. EU GreenWeek starts today in Lisbon with an opening day conference dedicated to nature and biodiversity. Taking place in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, this year's event will look at the role green policies can play in creating jobs and growth and stimulating recovery once the virus recedes. It's also a milestone on the path to next year's Convention on Biodiversity, where world leaders will adopt a 10-year action plan to protect the variety of life on Earth. To coincide with EU Green Week, we're launching our own special Green Tomorrow coverage, highlighting environmental stories and issues from around the world. Well, let's find out more and head straight to Brussels to speak to our correspondent, Shona Murray. Shona, morning to you. So EU Green Week, it's really been headlined as under the banner of sort of nature and biodiversity. What actually is the aim, though, of the next 7 days? What are they trying to achieve? And how does it all tie into the anticipated coronavirus recovery?
Well, good morning, Rosie. I think the main point really is to highlight how we're losing biodiversity and nature in an exponential way, whether it's excessive deforestation, over-exploitation of the land or marine pollution, and that the threat of global warming still very much looms large but has been overshadowed in terms of focus by the pandemic in some way. And the EU has said it's always going to be a leader in this area. We saw the Green Deal announced earlier at the top of the year, but again it's been slightly overshadowed. But as Ursula von der Leyen said a few weeks ago, a crisis is a terrible opportunity to waste. And the EU is tying in the coronavirus recovery with sustainable building, with sustainable recovery, particularly in the energy sector and reconstruction. So I think the EU is trying to fuse the two, but also trying to remind us that global warming, because of human action, is still a huge ongoing threat.
That Green Deal strategy you talk about, Shona, though, has already encountered some opposition from within the EU. How realistic, really, is this push for green recovery?
Yeah, you're right about that. And at the top, when we were talking about the Green Deal back in January, there were some countries, in particular countries like Poland, who were really not on board, and they're economies that rely still heavily on coal. And part of this coronavirus recovery is to move away from coal using hydrogen, and again, using the €750 billion coronavirus recovery fund to enable that. So really the two are intertwined. Now, you mentioned, there are certain countries that are reticent, but I think they're moving along. The issue isn't as partisan as it is in the United States, for example, where the world's largest economy walked away from the Paris Climate Accord. Last week you saw in the United States a Supreme Court Justice nominee saying that climate change was something that was disputed. But at the same time, the EU will still have an argument over this. We saw in the European Parliament, the Parliament voting to reduce emissions by 60%, the Commission saying it should be 55% plus, and it's the member states that have to obviously enact all of these policies. So there will be some sort of push and pull on this issue. But I think overall, the EU member states are united in some way that this is something that really needs to be tackled as soon as possible. Rosie?
Shona, thank you very much. Our correspondent there in Brussels.